Someone is lying. Someone knows exactly what happened on that scaffolding. And if Coronation Street fans are right, the person everyone is accusing may actually be innocent. For weeks, suspicion has surrounded Gary Windass. The evidence seems overwhelming. The accusations keep growing. And Detective Kit Green appears more convinced than ever that Gary is responsible for Theo Silverton's shocking death. But what if the biggest suspect isn't the killer at all? What if Gary is hiding the truth for a completely different reason? Because after Wednesday night's explosive flashback, viewers believe they've spotted a clue that changes absolutely everything. And if they're right, the real killer is still walking free. The mystery deepened the moment the flashback began. For the first time, viewers were transported back to the night Theo died. A night filled with secrets. A night filled with fear. And a night that may eventually destroy several lives. As the scene unfolded, fans watched Gary standing high on the scaffolding outside Theo and Todd's flat. The atmosphere was eerie. Uncomfortable. Almost sinister. Then came the image nobody could ignore. Theo's lifeless body lying below. Motionless. Broken. Dead. It was a moment designed to shock viewers. And it certainly did. But strangely, it wasn't Theo's body that grabbed most fans' attention. It was Gary's reaction. Because according to many viewers, Gary didn't look like a killer. He looked like a man who had just stumbled upon something horrifying. And that's where the real mystery begins. Almost immediately, social media exploded with theories. Viewers began analyzing every second of the flashback. Every glance. Every movement. Every expression. And many reached exactly the same conclusion. Gary looked genuinely shocked. Not guilty. Not relieved. Not angry. Shock. The kind of shock that comes from witnessing something unexpected. The kind of shock that comes from discovering a body. Not creating one. Suddenly, a completely different possibility started emerging. What if Gary arrived too late? What if Theo was already dead? And perhaps even more importantly, if Gary didn't kill Theo, then who did? The questions only get darker from there. Because nobody is claiming Gary is completely innocent. Far from it. Fans believe he is hiding something. Something enormous. Something dangerous. But the secret may not be murder. Instead, viewers suspect Gary could be covering for the real killer. And if that's true, his silence could eventually destroy everything. One fan suggested a chilling possibility. What if Gary arrived intending to confront Theo? Maybe even attack him? Maybe give him the beating he'd been threatening? But before he got the chance, someone else got there first. Someone with their own motive. Someone with their own secret. Someone willing to kill. Suddenly Gary's behavior begins making more sense. Because a guilty man and a frightened witness behave very differently. And fans think Gary is behaving like a witness. A witness trapped inside a nightmare. A witness who knows the truth could ruin multiple lives. But that's only the beginning. Because another shocking theory is gaining serious momentum. And it involves someone very close to Gary. Sarah Platt. For weeks, Sarah has found herself tangled in the emotional fallout surrounding Theo's death. But some viewers now believe her involvement goes much deeper. Much deeper. According to one theory, Gary and Sarah may have discovered Theo's body together. Not after the police arrived. Not after the investigation started. But immediately after the murder. If that's true, it changes everything. Because according to fans, they may have reached a devastating conclusion. What if Todd killed Theo? What if Gary and Sarah believed Todd was responsible? And what if they decided to protect him? Suddenly their strange behavior starts to look very different. Not suspicious because they're guilty. Suspicious because they're covering up somebody else's crime. It's a theory that sounds unbelievable. Yet many fans are convinced it would explain almost everything. And if Todd really is at the center of this mystery, how long can the truth stay hidden? But one detail changes everything. Another fan theory is even more shocking. Because some viewers have turned their attention towards Sarah herself. Not as a witness. Not as an accomplice. But as the killer. The possibility has stunned fans. Could Sarah really be hiding something that dark? Could her grief actually be guilt? Could her concern actually be fear? The theory remains unproven. Yet supporters insist there are still too many unanswered questions surrounding her actions. And until those questions are answered, suspicion continues growing. However, another suspect is creating even more debate. And this is where the story becomes truly disturbing. Because some viewers believe the killer isn't an adult at all. They think it's Sam Blakeman. The theory sounds almost impossible. Yet it refuses to disappear. In fact, it's becoming one of the most talked about explanations among fans. The reasoning behind it is deeply emotional and heartbreaking. Supporters of the theory believe Sam may have mistaken Theo for someone else. Someone who had been causing him immense distress. Someone he desperately wanted to confront. Someone he feared. In a tragic moment of confusion, panic, and anger, fans speculate that Sam could have pushed Theo without understanding the consequences. If that happened, the emotional fallout would be devastating. Not only because of Theo's death, but because of what it would mean for Sam. A young boy carrying a secret too terrible to comprehend. A secret capable of destroying him. And perhaps explaining why he's been struggling so badly ever since. The theory is shocking. But what happens next is even more surprising. Because some fans aren't convinced Sam acted alone. They think Gary saw everything. Every horrifying second. And instead of exposing the truth, he chose silence. Why? Because revealing what happened would destroy Sam's life forever. If that's true, Gary isn't protecting himself. He's protecting a child. And suddenly his behavior takes on an entirely different meaning. But even that isn't the strangest theory emerging from Weatherfield. Because another unexpected suspect has entered the frame. Jodi Ramsey. Viewers have become increasingly suspicious of her mysterious interactions with Theo before his death. At first, those scenes seemed insignificant. Almost forgettable. But now fans are revisiting them with fresh eyes. Looking for clues. Looking for motives. Looking for answers. One viewer believes Jodi's strange behavior may have been deliberate foreshadowing. A hidden clue planted months earlier. If true, the implications are enormous. Because unlike some other suspects, Jodi may actually have a believable escape route. Some fans believe she could argue self-defense. Meaning she might survive the revelation without leaving the show. And that possibility has only intensified the speculation. Yet another theory points in an entirely different direction. Theo's own family. Specifically his son. Some viewers suspect Theo's death may have originated much closer to home than anyone realized. And according to this theory, Danielle may know far more than she's admitting. Could she be protecting someone? Could she already know the truth? Could her silence be part of a much larger cover-up? The questions keep multiplying. But answers remain frustratingly out of reach. And perhaps that's exactly what makes this mystery so compelling. Because every new clue seems to create 3 more questions. Every revelation creates fresh suspicion. Every flashback changes the narrative. And nobody knows who can be trusted anymore. Not Gary. Not Sarah. Not Jodi. Not Todd. Not even Sam. Then things become even more complicated. Because viewers have started focusing on one tiny detail from the flashback that could completely rewrite the entire investigation. The weapon. Fans noticed Gary appeared to be holding something that may have been used during the attack. At first glance, that seems incredibly damaging. Almost impossible to explain away. But some viewers think the opposite. They believe Gary wasn't carrying the weapon because he used it. They believe he took it from somebody else. Someone fleeing the scene. Someone desperate to avoid being caught. If that's true, Gary wasn't covering up a murder. He was covering up a killer. And that's a very different crime. Suddenly every action he's taken since Theo's death becomes far more complicated. His lies. His panic. His reluctance to speak. His confrontations with Kit. Everything starts fitting together differently. Not as evidence of guilt, but as evidence of fear. Fear of what happens if the truth finally emerges. Fear of who might be exposed. Fear of who might get hurt. And perhaps fear of what he himself witnessed that night. But if one thing is becoming clear, it's this. The flashback didn't solve the mystery. It made the mystery even bigger. Because the more viewers learn, the less certain they become. Gary may be hiding something. In fact, he almost certainly is. But according to growing numbers of fans, murder isn't the secret he's protecting. The real secret is who actually killed Theo Silverton. And somewhere in Weatherfield, the answer may already be hiding in plain sight. A frightened witness. A protected child. A grieving suspect. A dangerous cover-up. Or a killer nobody has suspected yet. For now, the truth remains buried. But if the latest fan theories are even remotely correct, the person responsible for Theo's death may be the last person anyone expects. And when that final secret finally explodes into the open, everything viewers thought they knew about Theo's murder could be turned upside down forever.